End of every chapter in your goniometry book are muscle length tests, not straight goniometry. So when you look at page 126, 127, and following, actually looking at 128, 129, which is what we're about to do, you want to make sure you don't measure wrist extension like that. Because remember, you're trying to avoid passive insufficiency with goniometry. With muscle length testing, you purposely want passive insufficiency of some muscle group. So as you look at page 129 in your textbook, what muscle group do you think is being indirectly assessed? In other words, what muscle group is being stretched?
Flexors.
Flexors of the fingers. Okay, so we haven't actually gone over finger flexors yet, but the reason we cover it now is because the measurement of that is the exact same landmarks that we just used. So can you get against the table this way to where originally? With the wrist hand hanging over the side. Okay, so we're going to use the exact same landmarks, but instead of letting the fingers relax, if I'm going to do an indirect measurement of the finger, the tightness of the finger flexors, I want his fingers extended. Okay, and now what am I doing to the finger flexors? Engaging them, stretching them. I'm lengthening them, stretching them. And then I line up the goniometer exact same way. So this was with just straight goniometry. This is muscle length assessment. All right? So if I measure wrist flexion, I let the fingers relax. What am I assessing if I flex his wrist, his fingers, and then do the wrist flexion? This is an indirect assessment of the
Extenders?
finger extensors because I'm stretching them, right? Okay, so you line up the goniometer in the same place, but what you do with the fingers makes a difference between straight goniometry and muscle length assessment. All right, so in your book, you turn the page, and it's showing you the indirect measurement of the finger extensors. All right, so don't get those mixed up. I have had students get those mixed up. So anything to clarify about those? All right, let's go ahead and we've just got 2 muscle tests. Let's do those, and then we'll probably have a break, and then let you all practice these things. So in your notes, now we're at page, what? 161. Page 161. Page 161 in your notes, and then in your muscle testing book, page 157 and following. And again, your book has nice pictures of this. All right, this time we can get you on the side of this. Go ahead, just stick this little space in there. Yep, your chalk right next to the table there. Back as far as you do. Okay, this is what I was thinking of before, where your book has it. And if you're at a regular table, it's easier to do this where you're on top of your hands on top of the table. But I'm fine with you have it hanging over the side like this. All right. Actually, which one is first? Wrist flexors? Okay. So wrist flexors. If I want to do wrist flexion against gravity, what would be a good position for his forearm to be in? Supination. So we're going to turn your arm this way. All right, let's go ahead and bring it in closer like that. All right. Are you a little tight in your shoulder here? Let's see. Let's lower
I think
the
the
table
table's
down
a little
here.
high.
Can you lower it a little bit for me? Stop right there. Okay, a little, just a tiny bit more. Just a tiny bit more. Okay, that's good. All right, there we go. All right, and I don't want to sit on that part. Here's the motion I want you to do, just like that. Okay, now your book distinguishes, and your notes do, I think, too, doing wrist flexion with radial deviation versus doing wrist flexion with ulnar deviation. Okay, which would the first emphasize? What muscle? With flexion, radial deviation. The flexor carpi radialis longus. The second one would emphasize flexor carpi ulnaris. Okay, so think about that. So this next start writing. Okay, if I'm going to do wrist flexion plus radial deviation, so I'm emphasizing the flexor carpi radialis longus. What direction is the resistance? You can hold it right there. It's in wrist extension plus ulnar deviation in the opposite direction. Go ahead and relax. If I'm going to emphasize the flexor carpi ulnaris, wrist flexion, ulnar deviation, hold it right there. My resistance is in the direction of wrist extension and radial deviation. Okay? So think about that. And there's also just straight wrist flexion, where I just bring it up and I just try to pull them down into extension. All right, so think about how you would change your resistance to emphasize in the position to emphasize muscles on the radial side versus the ulnar side. Okay, if he can't flex against gravity, what's the next step? Okay, we need to minimize gravity. I could do that manually, but what we want you to do now is find a position that will minimize gravity. And that can be with the forearm in neutral. I think, again, your notes in your book might have them on the table, and that's okay if there's not too much friction there. But I'm okay with you being on the side of the table, hanging off the table like that. Okay, so here's the motion that look there. Here's the motion I want you to do. And if you can do that, that would be a grade 2. If you can do it partially, it would be a 2 minus. Okay? Distinguish between a 1 and a 0. Okay, so you want to be able to palpate the flexor carpi radialis. So, and it's pretty easy to see here. Okay, go ahead and bring it in. Okay, so remember, most of us are going to have 2 tendons right there. Which one is the most, the one in midline? Palmaris longus. Just lateral to that will be the flexor carpi radialis longus. Okay, go ahead and relax for a minute. Okay, I want you to try to do that motion. And you can't do it, but I'm feeling if the tendon pops up. Okay, I need a second way to do it. So I'm going to put him in flexion plus what? Radial deviation. Say, hold it right there. Can you hold it? He can't do it, but I'm seeing if he can try. Hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. And relax. Okay? To palpate the flexor carpi ulnaris, you remember where that inserts? Remember that bone right there?
Triquetrum.
Okay, what's anterior to the triquetrum?
Pisiform.
Is it the pisiform or pisiform?
Pisiform.
Pisiform, right? So that tendon is just proximal to that. So again, I have his hand here. I find his pisiform, and just go proximal to that. So I try to bring your hand up and to the side. Try to bring it up like that. All right, can you do that? I can feel the tendon, or I can put him in that position. Say, hold it right there. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Don't let it down. Hold it, hold it, hold it. Okay, so be able to distinguish flexor carpi radialis longus and ulnaris in your palpation.
But not on position 0 to 2.
Not on positions. Well, that was for 0, right? Because we're distinguishing
okay,
between
so
a 1 and a 0.
2 or 2 minus then.
For the gravity minimized, yeah, I wouldn't be concerned about that. Okay, let's see if there's anything else. All right, fingers. Yeah, you want the fingers and thumb to be relaxed. So a substitution could be using finger muscles to do the motion. All right, so just say, keep your fingers relaxed as you do that. Okay, anything else about wrist flexors? Okay, and then we've got the wrist extensors. What would be a good position for his forearm to be in to go against gravity? In pronation this time. Okay? So, and just keep your fingers relaxed. Let me see you lift your hand up like that. Okay, can you do that? All right. And then I could tell him, I could emphasize extensor carpi. Oh, I made a mistake. Who knows the mistake I made before?
Flexor carpi radialis longus.
That's right. There's only a flexor carpi radialis. Points off. All right. So now we're doing extension. And what does wrist extension plus radial deviation? Longus. This is where the longus is. Okay, so I want you to bring your hand up and go to the side like that. Okay, can you do that? And then hold it there. And my resistance is in the direction of wrist flexion and ulnar deviation. Okay, to emphasize the extensor carpi ulnaris, I want him to do, and move your leg a little bit, wrist extension and bring it over this way, ulnar deviation. And hold it there. My resistance is in the direction of wrist flexion and radial deviation. Okay, if you can't do it against gravity, gravity minimized position, again, is going to be a neutral forearm. Okay, and then to palpate for extensor carpi radialis longus, that will be at the base of the second metacarpal. The extensor, the wrist extensor tendons are not as easy to palpate as the wrist flexor tendons. So I'm going to find his second metacarpal and go to the base of it down there and say, let me see you try to bring your hand up into the side. And even though he can't do it, I'm going to feel for that tendon. Or the second way, put him there and say, hold it there, hold it. Even though he can't hold it, I'll see if he's contracting that tendon. Okay, and then what about palpating the extensor carpi ulnaris? If you find your ulnar styloid process and go just distal to that, the tendon is going to be in there. All right, so here's his ulnar styloid process. I go just distal to that. And here's what I want you to do. Bring your hand up and to the side like that. All right, can you do that? Even though he can't, feeling for the tendon popping up. Or I can put him in the position and say, hold it there. Hold it. Try to hold it. Even though he can't, I'm seeing if the tendon is popping up underneath my fingers. Okay, and again, you want the fingers to be relaxed, as it says in the comment section there. I didn't show the palpation for the extensor carpi radialis brevis, but that will be at the base of what metacarpal? The third one. So in that capitate area is where it is. Again, it's not as easy to feel on most people as the flexor tendons are. Okay, anything to clarify about the muscle test? They're fairly straightforward if you know your muscles pretty well. All right, let's take a break and then we'll practice those when you get back.